part 3. So we're going to talk about secure pork plant. A lot of analogies while we work on that, and I have like a video for you as well. The secure pork supply plan. What is that? This is a plan that we build in your farm, and this is a volunteer plan that is to use to have preparedness for in case it's an outbreak. So it's what it's called. You see in the green box is a pre-outbreak preparedness plan, which tell us to what are the steps that we need to take to be prepared in case it's a foreign animal disease outbreak. And this one is just not only for a foreign animal disease outbreak. This one can apply for all the disease and just preparedness and biosecurity for any disease. It's just a good practice for another farm. But in terms of foreign animal disease outbreak, what it does is just at some point it can allow the movement of pigs, and it minimizes the risk and help us to assess the risk when it's completed and processed in a timely manner. This is it's just like a plan that we have, and usually in each farm we have a file, and it has three main components that we're gonna discuss through this presentation. The main component is the biosecurity part. Second component, traceability. And third component, surveillance. This just disease monitoring. And this is a lot of information that we're going to share in the website to the Pork Checkoff. They work a lot and they have a lot of materials already available. So you guys don't have to start from zero. So like where I start my plan? At what point? There's already forms, handouts, step by step how to do it. We're going to get familiar to it. We're going to try and start developing those plans for each of you guys farm. There is also the beauty of this. This is tailored specific for your farm. In the website, they have some examples that if you have pasture pigs, if you have indoor, outdoor, it applies for all types farms, small, medium, large scale. It's just to be prepared. I like to compare when it was COVID. By the time of COVID, when it hit us the island, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to go, if we need to stay home. And then just as we were going to this outbreak and this pandemic, we're trying to develop these guidelines and this process and wash your hands and just feet away from each other. So this one is have a plan in case a situation like that happens. So it's just kind of analogy to just be prepared. Is always like if it happens again, COVID for anyone, we kind of know, okay, we're going to start wearing masks. We're going to stay home. We're just going to just go out when it's necessary. And we already kind of know the steps. So it's similar to that. The next slide, I'm going to try to play the video for you. It's 6-minute video.
Ways the Pork Checkoff is helping producers better navigate an ever-changing future in pork. Let's get to it. The Secure Pork Supply, or SPS for short, is a comprehensive plan designed to enhance the preparedness of the U.S. pork industry against foot-and-mouth disease, classical swine fever, and African swine fever. I'm sure you're wondering, why do I need to be worried about foreign animal diseases that aren't even in the U.S.? I'm glad you asked. A domestic outbreak would result in severe movement restrictions to limit the risk of disease spread. And research has estimated it could result in industry-wide losses from $15 to $100 billion. We can all agree that we hope an outbreak never happens. But if it does, it's crucial to have a proactive plan to help producers on sites with no signs of infection. Your business is your livelihood. And we want to do everything we can to reduce your risk. So let's talk more about how we implement this proactive plan to help maintain business continuity during an outbreak. The SPS is a plan of action that focuses on enhanced biosecurity, animal traceability, and disease monitoring. Successful implementation of the plan will help assure state animal health officials that sites and disease control areas are doing everything they can to prevent disease entry, detect disease early, and demonstrate the lack of infection. This puts producers in the best position to be granted a movement permit during an outbreak. Biosecurity is the first line of defense for a potential outbreak. Proactive measures will be integrated into every production stage encompassing controlled access and strict sanitation protocols. Let's take a more in-depth look.
Enhanced biosecurity and secure pork supply includes two different layers of biosecurity, the perimeter buffer area and the line of separation. The perimeter buffer area, or PBA, is that first layer of biosecurity to reduce the risk. If we can put in measures that need to be taken anytime someone crosses into that PBA, that will reduce the viral load in that area. There's a lot of flexibility on how that can be drawn on a site, and there's guidance on that flexibility at securepork.org. The line of separation, or LOS, is the next layer that we put in biosecurity measures, again, to stop that virus from entering the building. So it applies to people, equipment, supplies, anything that enters into those animal areas. It's important that both of these be marked, and you need to know where it is as you cross it. And then crossing into the PBA and LOS also occurs through access points where we implement those biosecurity measures to reduce the risk of the virus coming in to the animal areas.
Now let's talk traceability. Foreign diseases can spread from contaminated vehicles to even people's clothing. Producers may be asked to provide trace-back information to identify potential exposure in an outbreak. Tracking movement information before an outbreak helps ensure producers are better prepared to provide regulatory officials with the information needed during an outbreak. Acquiring a premises identification number, or PIN, is one of the essential tracking tools for identifying whether regulatory officials deem your site to be located in a control area. PINs are required when requesting a movement permit and can speed up the response. PINs tie the site information together.
For those folks that don't have a PIN number, the step would be to contact their state animal health official in the state where the animals are located. To get that contact information, if they go to securepork.org, there's a section where they can click on the PIN or premises identification number, and that has a map. And if they just click on the state where their production occurs, they will get the appropriate individual to reach out to have those discussions.
Continuous disease monitoring is a crucial step in raising a healthy herd. All animal caretakers should be trained to identify clinical signs of foreign animal diseases. They should know who to contact if they see these signs or when production parameters are out of whack. Producers should always remember 3 steps when monitoring their herd. 1, observe. Learn how to recognize when animals look off due to a foreign animal disease. 2, record. Prepare to keep records up to date, always. 3, report. Develop an emergency action plan so everyone on staff knows how to report abnormal findings during an outbreak. It's no secret that potential foreign animal disease threats could cause massive challenges to the pork industry. The SPS plan helps producers prepare. It may seem like a daunting task, but there are many free resources you can access at securepork.org. The SPS Toolkit provides practical resources and guidance for producers, helping them understand and develop plans to enhance their ability to navigate the challenges of an outbreak. Here are a few ways producers can begin developing a customized plan. Request a national premises identification number from your state veterinarian. Utilize AgView to keep movement records of animals, people, and equipment. Write and implement your enhanced site-specific biosecurity plan. Train caretakers to monitor for foreign animal diseases. And talk to your vet about being prepared to collect samples.
Creating a site-specific biosecurity plan is important to do prior to an outbreak, and it's a process. Some of them will start at the beginning with their veterinarian and have those discussions before they develop their plan. It's important to have veterinarians involved in writing the plan, but also implementing it. Once you write the measures, making sure that you're following them on a daily basis is important too.
In conclusion, the Secure Pork Supply is a commitment to our food supply and the livelihoods of those in the pork industry. By working together and implementing these proactive measures, we can better prepare our industry for an outbreak of foreign animal disease and work towards maintaining business continuity.
we need to understand the way that we spread animal diseases and how, and that will help us when we're building our plan. Diseases they will spread through insects, through the sow to the piglets, saliva, breath, urine. Even when we do natural breeding, there can be a source of infection and contamination of these premises. We will be talking of foreign animal diseases, African swine fever. I think we heard that. Classical swine fever as well, and foot and mouth disease. Just to be clear, this is not a public health or food safety concern. We need to be prepared for in case of any type of outbreak. So then what I was telling you guys, this plan has three main components is a biosecurity component, traceability component, and surveillance component. So the biosecurity component is a series of management practices. They are designed, again, for your farm specifically to prevent the introduction and the spread of diseases in the premises. And we call it enhanced biosecurity because it has these four different areas that we're just gonna talk broadly, and then Dr. Tom is just gonna do more specifics of it. First of all, we need to have who's going to be the biosecurity manager or the person that is going to develop this plan, put it in place and reinforce these practices. So it could be the manager, it could be the owner, it could be is usually what's recommended, right? Then we need to, like I mentioned before, this plan is very site specific, and where we look at your premises, we're gonna look from a Google map picture and we can start delineating the perimeter buffer area. So what's the area around the premises and the line of separation between contaminated or potential areas of contamination and how to keep of our area um, protected, right? So this is, and then Pork Checkoff has done a lot. It's a lot of materials. They have a specific examples about size specific plants, lines of separation, and this perimeter buffer area as well. Okay, so I was saying here, in terms of biosecurity, they have a self-assessment checklist for animals raised indoors, for the ones they have indoors. However, they also have, as you can see, animals with outdoor access, just enclosed walkways, separated buildings. So they have various examples, as you can see the example right here in the middle, when we have our farm and we can see what is going to be our access points. Yeah, so we can see with the arrows what is going to be the lines of separation, and then where is going to be our parking. We need to have a designated parking area. It's recommended to have a loading or loading feed, or why not in designated area, because one example is, these vehicles, they go farm to farm delivering feed. So we need to make sure we have a line of separation, or a buffer area. There is no way any type of disease that can be transported into vehicles get enter into our farm, right? So that's part of the plan, right? Okay, so let's go to the next one. So going to point number two, traceability, and this is part of about what we are talking last time, the importance of having a PIN number. Thank you for the ones they submitted their form. It's been forwarded to the Department of Agriculture, and we're working with them, try to following up to that. So again, if you guys need assistance filling out the form, I'll be happy to help you. But for the ones that done it, like, thank you. It's gonna be part of this plan because this PIN number is gonna be in this plan, right? And then in that way, there is association where the animals are located, and it comes with the address and all the information, the manager, and people to contact to. Okay. All right. Let's just go to the next one. Okay. And something that we always highly recommend is the importance of record keeping. And I think for the most part, most of us were really good about record keeping, but this is gonna like again enhance record keeping. So we're gonna try to keep, and the forms are already there. So in your file, where you have your folder with your plan, you can attach all these forms. They're just printable forms where they have, you know, the movement of your animals, and is very important. They already have a visitor log, so you can just attach it, and anyone that enters to the premises needs to sign in just as a best practice. And if we're gonna talk about ag view in our next, I believe, in our next webinar. So then having electronic records that your veterinarian, your extension agent, and yourself can just share. So that makes it, the network, and just enhance biosecurity overall. But paper is fine for the ones that we still like to do in paper as well. Okay. And the third part of this plan is the surveillance part, disease monitoring. And I really like to emphasize the importance of this because, the more that you observe and the more monitor that you do, the better you get trained in looking at things. So you're not gonna find things if you're not looking at it. So it's very important to the people that go and feed those animals in the morning, the caretakers, the manager, all of us will get well trained. And how is the best way to get trained and to observing abnormal behavior, any type of lethargy of disease, doing repetition and repetition. So this is part of it, how caretakers and everybody that's in these premises can get trained to this surveillance and disease monitoring. And again, it's foreign animal diseases, but applies for everything. When you have animals that are just, not doing well, they just see any traces of diarrhea, it just helps overall to have a better eye on these diseases, right? And again, all these forms like daily observation log is already in the website, so you can just go ahead, click the link, and just download it and just print it out for your caretakers or for anyone that's involved in your operation. Yeah, this is an example as you can see below. Okay, and let's see what's next. Okay. And part of this surveillance on disease monitoring, and thank you for Pork Checkoff to funding this opportunity, is it's going to be opportunity for get some people get certified swine sample collectors. So I guess a question that I like to ask, are you or your caretakers are prepared to collect samples when allowed if this is an outbreak? That's a question that we can answer ourselves, yes, no, maybe. So then is the importance of it in terms of, veterinary access is limited, and in terms this is an outbreak, the less people that you let into your farm and get it out of your farm, the more is it control the outbreak, the disease. So that's the importance of having someone the certified swine sample collector. And I think we're gonna just be a little more training when we do in person. But this is kind of the first steps. You guys can see there is a lot of information in the website as well, how to become a certified swine sample collector, just to get familiar to it and the importance of it. They're getting samples and how to submit it. It's not just only collect it, how to handle it, how to submit it. That's all for me. Again, thank you very much for raising fresh local pork in the island. I'm gonna stop sharing, and I'm happy to answer some questions. And if not, Tom, we can just go ahead and just go more detailed explanation.
So we don't have any group questions in the chat, but everyone feel free to add them as we go. And then Tom, I don't know if you have anything specific that you want to add with all this, since you've obviously made a few of these plans in the past, to say the least.
Yeah, so it's a really important piece of what we're going to try and accomplish when we do the on-site visits. Our goal is to get as many sites, signed up or at least started in the process, and people understanding how that this will be done the big reason that this is important is in the event that one of those foreign animal diseases would come to Hawaii, in particular, if it's on your particular island, what'll end up happening is the state, as soon as that happens, we'll be working with the USDA and trying to limit where the infection spreads to by establishing what we call buffer areas. And I should have done that. I should have created, or I should say they're buffer zones. I should have shown a picture of that. Maybe I can remember to do that one of these upcoming ones. But basically, let's say the infected site is right in and around Hilo on the Big Island. And then what they would do is they would then automatically, number one, they create usually a 3 mile buffer around that. Well, that covers a lot of island, you know, and so, and then beyond that, they can extend beyond it. It's not necessarily a perfect radial circle. If it turns out that that particular site that ended up being found with ASF is very correlated. Like, let's say somebody clear on the other side of the island frequents it often, or maybe it's co-managed or something like that. They look for ties for where the links might be until they can rule out that it's been spread or not. And this is really very common and customary for even some domestic diseases. Right now, like in the mainland U.S., we might have a tuberculosis in cattle pop up, and then immediately that site is quarantined, and then they start testing neighboring herds to see if it's spread there by other vectors or other avenues. And so it isn't just like this is just something for pork. This can happen for virtually any livestock species. And again, with the main goal is to stomp it out as quickly as possible before it gets too far. So once you're put into that buffer area, if you're included in that, you have a stop shipment on everything that in your area. And even if you're not the infected site, you are affected by this, because if you want to transport pigs at all, eat within that buffer area, or especially when it comes out of that buffer area, then you have to have a permit for that. So the state of Hawaii would be out canvassing who's all in that buffer zone, and then they'll even pull in the state authorities as far as law enforcement to control the traffic. So if all of a sudden a pig truck is driving down or something suspicious, they can stop them and say, why are you moving? And there'd be fines and all that if you're moving animals after it's been alerted. So you can get a permit. Every state might be a little different. They're trying to get every single state to comply to somewhat of a regular rules. That probably doesn't matter as much for you, because you don't have any interstate transport very often unless it's incoming. But here, a pig might get on a trailer in Nebraska today, and 6 to 8 hours later be dropping off pigs in Wisconsin, which is 2 to 3 states away. So what we have to make sure that we have is a means by which to permit that to happen. So you have to get permission from the state it's going to, and even within the state, to move those pigs. And so the first and foremost priority. So let's say there's 100 permit requests come into the state office. We need permits. We need to move pigs. They're going to prioritize the farms that have their secure pork supply done, because what it allows is them to very quickly look at that plan, and you'll see that here in a minute, and quickly understand the biosecurity standards, who to contact, how the sites that you're shipping from are set up, etc. And it allows them to very quickly grab their hands around it. So what we do here right now, and this is what we will do as soon as we get somebody with a secure pork supply plan, is we will then submit that copy to the state as a preemptive way for them to review it, say, hey, this looks good, but you need to tweak these things. And then therefore, then you modify the document and resubmit it, and then they say, good, this is good to go. You know, if tomorrow, if we have a foreign animal disease problem, you'll be on the priority list because you have this done. So that's why it's really, really important so that we can move pigs smart in a smart way, you know, so that we don't spread disease around. So any questions before I go to a sample document?
Yeah, we do have some questions. So one question is, are we only concerned with those three primary foreign animal diseases, or are there others such as lepto, PRRS, uroplegia, etc.?
We're concerned about them all. Now, for this particular thing, it's specifically highly designed around the foreign animal diseases, but already some other programs that we'll be talking about at some point, they're already talking about how to also monitor. Remember the third piece of what Yoon presented to us is the surveillance model, is that some of that will also be an ability to surveil for domestic diseases, so we know, you know, kind of where they're at and what's happening with those in prevalence and location. And when I say location, that's a vague association. They in the US, you can dial it into county. So if I remember right, Maui County is 2 islands. And so by dialing into the county, they could say, well, this particular domestic disease or this particular foreign animal disease is located on Maui County. And so that would just say it's somewhere on Maui or somewhere on Kauai. So there is some location to that. But then uh, going back to that is there already is a desire from a lot of the producers up here saying, hey, we would like it for PRRS reporting and so forth. So if you remember last week, I mentioned that there's certain state reportable diseases. Like if you get PRRS, they need to be told that you have PRRS, or some of the states link into the diagnostics as they're submitted, and anything that has your PIN number and or even your address sends a red alert to them so that they know that that particular disease is going on. So right now the urgency is towards, because what can happen is if the US is infected and we don't have a plan in place, our neighbor countries where we export meat to, in particular pork, if we export, is we could lose that export until we're free of that disease, which could take some time. And so the goal of these is to have a good plan in place already, so that in the event that, let's say in Texas there's an ASF outbreak, if we can have this stuff prepared, we can create confidence in our in our in our in our customers overseas and in countries not to shut down, just to say we're not going to take meat from Texas. We'll take pigs from anywhere else, but not from there, because we have a good monitor to say it's not anywhere else. So yeah, domestic will come in at a pretty high rate once these things all get rolling.
Yeah, it's one of those prevention, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, I think, as the old saying goes. But being able to prevent these as much as possible is really where we start seeing the changes. Once you're in that situation and having to deal with them, you're really on your back feet trying to run a race, to say the least. We have two other questions. One is, are they learning how to do tier 2 sampling? And I believe we have that set for the springtime. Correct me if I'm wrong. For
Be
collecting
part of
samples. That'll be a part of the
yeah,
spring.
the participating producers. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question was, what kind of costs would we be looking at as far as permits? Did you mean export permits or just like shipping permits, export permits, any particular kind?
Yeah. Okay. So on question number one, just to follow up on that, one of the goals is to have some people on each island, at least, if we possibly can, that become certified swine samplers. And so right now, as it is, or as it was originally written, when it's a regulatory disease of the state and or the federal government, the only people that can collect samples are federal veterinarians, state veterinarians, and or, depending on the disease, what we call accredited veterinarians within the US. And so an accreditation is something that most livestock veterinarians get because it's the only way that they can write health papers. It's the only way that they can do brucellosis testing, pseudorabies testing, TB testing, very regulated diseases that are important to have a lot of detail and done correctly. Now, that being said, there's even some things on our accreditation as veterinarians, if we've done that and gone through the training for that, is if it's a foreign animal disease, it's still the state and or the federal authorities that had in the past would be the only ones that could take those. So to get that accreditation, what I have to do is I have to do book training, some video training, I have to do continuing education, that type of thing. There's actually two tiers to that also. There's a type 1, which is to really for companion animals, whereas as 2 is a little more rigorous and is where you can also do things for livestock. So yes, one of our huge goals is to get people certified because we're pushing that up here as well because there's only so many veterinarians and there's only so many accredited veterinarians. And so there's going to be a lot of samples to be taken. And so it's one thing is that physically, can I be up enough hours to do all that collection? But then on top of that, we're going to have restrictions on biosecurity. So if I have a customer that ends up breaking with ASF and I end up going in there to do sample collection, well, how likely are my other customers going to allow me, once my sampling's done, to come visit their farms? And so it really puts a lot of limitations. And so our goal is to have people up here where we have a lot larger sized operations, is that virtually every company or every family that owns pigs has and ends up having somebody that can do the sampling. So there's some book work, there's some video training, and then there's some hands-on training. So we'll actually be looking for people that want to do that, long before the spring comes, because we can get a lot of the book work and we can get a lot of the video training done, so that then we can go ahead and get people certified on hands-on with taking samples. So that's a long answer to that question. So we need people to be able to do that. And then what kind of when we're talking permits, was that the other question, Gabby?
Yes, the second question was what cost would there be for looking at permits for sale and transport if they were in a disease outbreak zone, but not
Yep.
the actual disease outbreak site?
Right. So my understanding is that as it's associated with a foreign animal disease, is that you will not have a cost of getting that permit. Right now, there are certain states that, just to make sure that we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's, they will ask beyond just a health paper, what we call a certificate of veterinary inspection, a CVI, that they'll ask for a permit, and the permit requires you to either call in, go online, and to say, hey, here's where pigs are going. And it's just kind of a flag. And sometimes they will ask you specific questions about it. It's just really to make sure that they're notified that pigs are coming, or cattle are coming, or chickens are coming, or whatever that is. Those really don't have costs at all either, unless it's like if I have a customer that asks me to get that permit. For example, we need a special permit to be able to import pigs into Hawaii. And so what I will have to do is my involvement with that, I'll end up charging that, right? So if it's 15 minutes, it's 15 minutes or whatever I charge. Or some people will just come up with a flat permit fee. So from that standpoint, in general, though, the permit itself is not a cost as far as, hey, this is going to cost you $25. Like if I want a permit to do some construction on my house in a zoned area. So then the permit also, this is not one to go just across state lines. This is to move pigs at all. So if you fall in that buffer zone to legally move pigs at all from this location to that location, even if it's 100 yards down the street, it's going to require permitting in order to allow that movement. Because what it really is intended to do is it forces us to report our movements, so that if you're in that area and all of a sudden, especially if it goes out of your area, if it's going to go out of that buffer zone. So let's say they put a mile buffer zone on this, and you want to ship and deliver a boar to a customer or to somebody you're going to loan the boar to breed their animals that's out of that buffer zone, then obviously they want to know that, oh, we have pigs that were in the danger area and they're being moved out of the danger area, thus potentially extending that danger area. So it really does make sense with what we're asking. So that's the kind of the permitting process there. I also did see the question is, since we have a lot of on-site slaughter, can you give an example how an FAD might affect them? So the way that affects it directly is the death losses. So especially with African swine fever, classical swine fever, there's a high mortality. So all of a sudden you won't have pigs to send or to have people come and butcher live. The other part of that is I totally expect that, and that Dr. Heskett sent me a note, he couldn't be on here today, but I totally expect that what it'll be considered is if I'm in that buffer, if I'm in the kind of quote unquote caution zone, then what I'm expecting is that if you have live kill, number one, they may just say you can't do it. They could say that because they don't want the risk of people contamination and so forth. At the best case scenario I can see is you'll still need permitting and reporting, because people are going to be taking carcasses, they're going to be taking meat, they're going to be taking other offal and other things like that, and they're going to be transporting them very highly and probably out of the caution zone. So remember, these food products can be a contamination as well. So in the early parts of an ASF break, if your neighbor, let's say they're 100 feet down the road or 100 yards down the road or half a mile down the road, but when they break, remember, ASF is very slow, very insidious, and really hard to recognize. You know, it took up to 6 days for pigs to start showing the clinical signs. And so what can happen is I could be in that buffer zone. I've never been documented to have ASF, but if I would get ASF, I won't know it for 6 days. Well, if I'm doing live kill for 6 days and don't even know I have it, and the first pig hasn't even died, and then even after one pig dies, you're like, this looks like everything else. I just lost a pig. So we can go sometimes maybe up to 3 weeks before somebody sounds the alarm. Meanwhile, all that meat's going out and going into places of a danger zone. And if those people aren't educated that we can't feed that to other pigs or they're going to get ASF, we have a huge problem on our hands. So very, very likely that those sites will be regulated as well, because of the risk that they have and because the risk that they have of sending that out of the area. So this is one of those that I know we don't like extra work. I hate it. I hate documentation. My days in the office just drive me crazy and all that detail. But this is one that you're going to want to have done. Whether you buy into this whole thing from start to finish or not, you're going to want this done, or the state's going to be a headache for you. Yeah, it really are. So if we play by the rules, if we get prepared, the pain of it all can be highly reduced.
Thank you, Tom. I think that's all we have for questions right now.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen for a minute and give you guys an example of what one of these looks like. It doesn't mean that it has to be done my way, but there is a template that is on that secure pork supply plan. I'm almost certain that's what I started these with. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this is for a site. This is one of the first ones that I did. This is a sow farm that I visit regularly. In fact, I was there today, and things are doing well and thriving. So this is what we call their enhanced biosecurity form. So some of the things that are within this document, especially some of the areas and some of the practices that are designed, are not necessarily something that we do all the time now. We have our biosecurity plan for, I guess we call it peacetime, right? We're at peace. We don't have ASF. We don't have a foreign animal disease, a foot and mouth disease, or anything like that. When wartime comes, and it's in our area and or at our farms, then we will put in this enhanced biosecurity plan. And like I said, there's a nice template for it. This one actually, like I said, this is one of the first ones I did. This is actually 6 years old. We just reviewed this again because when we go through, I think somebody said we're going to do AgView next week. When we go through AgView, when you get enrolled into AgView, one of the things you do is you submit your secure pork supply plan.
Can you please clarify what you mean by wartime?
What I call wartime is if one of those bad diseases gets to us, right? Then it's wartime. I don't mean a literal war. Sorry, it's a war against the pathogen. Okay, so if ASF comes, or foot and mouth disease or classical swine fever comes to one of my areas, then we go into what we call a wartime, or into an enhanced biosecurity plan. So it's even deeper and more detailed and more layers to prevent spread as anything that we do right now. Does that make sense?
Effectively lockdown on the farm to some extent, but not real lockdown, just high caution.
Yeah. So a lot of this scope of the biosecurity plan is, again, here's our premise IDs that we have for these farms. It lists our addresses, what the basic makeup of it is. For example, this is a 5,000 head mature sows and boars. There's 2,400 nursery grow finished pigs on site, etc. The secondary premises listed are really where those pigs could go and do go when they leave this farm, because this is a farrow to wean, breed to wean operation. They leave as 3-week-old pigs unless they're the replacements they keep on site. Biosecurity managers, we set and name who that biosecurity manager is. We get the contact info that they need for that. In the event that they're away, we need a secondary biosecurity manager, and we list those. And then also I get listed as the veterinarian in that situation. Here's what their duties are. You check those boxes or you don't check those boxes if that's not the case. And then we talk about training. And so someone is responsible, or different personnel, and we list who's responsible for the training of new employees, of retraining people every year, just to keep it fresh and to invite any new concepts that we've gained. Protecting the pig herd site entry. We talk about what site entry means. This is a lot of definitions. Perimeter buffer area is labeled on the premises map at the end of this plan. We'll look at that. We have perimeter buffer area access point. That means when you cross that perimeter buffer area, you have certain access points. It's not like you can just go across at any point. They want to control the entry into that area. And that might literally be your driveway at the end of the road. Okay. Then we have things for cleaning and disinfection. We have designated parking areas. So if people do come, hey, in an enhanced situation, and honestly, we do some of this even currently and now, as we will have designated parking areas. We don't want people parking right up next to the site, potentially tracking something in. Well, we have our lines of separation. And again, at that line of separation, we have actual access points where we can cross that line. But almost always there's an intervention of some kind as you cross the line of separation. So just think of a line of separation. That's a key component of this. Is on one side of that, you call it quote unquote dirty. On your side of that, you call it quote unquote clean. If you actually have the disease, it's reversed. And so what it is we used to focus so much just on biosecurity of how we exclude, and we call it bioexclusion as a piece of this, is that we exclude ourselves from the diseases that are out there in the other pig populations. Now we talk a lot more about biocontainment also. So if I happen to be the one that has this particular disease, domestic or foreign, how do I try to prevent from spreading this to other people? Or if I own more than one site, how do I prevent getting it from one site to the next site? We talk about vehicles and equipment in the document. We talk about personnel, things that they do prior to arriving at the site, logging in when they come to the site, and then how we get in and out of that site biosecurely during this time where we have disease pressure. We talk about animals and semen. That would be the other thing that no matter what your operation is if you have any kind of breeding going on, whether you kill in your backyard for customers or whether you send to the slaughter plant or whatnot, is you have to control semen and any incoming animals, animal replacements, isolation periods. So now I'm in that zone and I want to bring in breeding stock that I purchased from somebody else. That truck bringing the breeding stock in, we have to have a plan that how we're going to get that truck out of our site and out of the buffer area without getting that disease on it. How we load animals, carcass disposal, and making sure that we have a certain way that we're going to do that. In this particular farm, they have a common compost site. Manure management. Oh, let me make a point of that. So that's important. So you see that we did not check that box. Farm designated vehicles hauling dead animals to a common compost site are contained within the perimeter buffer area. That's not true. They actually have a common compost site that isn't like related to their perimeter buffer area. So that's good for the authorities to know because now they have to be thinking about disease and how it could get in and out of that particular compost site. We talk about rodent control. Anything that can spread gets put into the document. Feed and getting feed trucks into the area is important too. So here's an example of the legend, and you'll see below, and when I scroll down, you're going to see this is kind of the legend to it, just like a map would have. So the perimeter buffer area is really just kind of a vaguer, not vague, but more broad area that says this designates this site. Okay. So if I'm going to enter into that perimeter buffer area, that doesn't even get me into the farm. I have to cross within that perimeter buffer area, sometimes contiguous with that perimeter buffer area is what we call our line of separation. And remember, if we're crossing the line of separation, we're entering the farm proper in general. Okay. And so you'll see in the map that I do here, it'll be in blue. Perimeter, where we access across the perimeter buffer area will be marked in that purple line. The line of separation is red and the access point for that is orange. The vehicle cleaning and disinfection station. So we don't do that now. I do know of people that if a vehicle comes on site, and I've had them in Hawaii, good customer down there, that they have a gating to keep people out, probably not just people that could infect their pigs, but just, general bad people or people that could be just wandering in that they don't need. But then when I go visit, they will stop me. They'll have a disinfectant pump at the gate. And as I drive, they spray my tires while they're turning and my undercarriage just to try to take another layer of potential disease spread off of things. So then, but then in an enhanced biosecurity, that vehicle cleaning and disinfection area is a requirement. And then there's the designated parking area. The black outline is for the carcass disposal area. Carcass removal. So we mark the pathways of how carcasses are taken from the farm, cross the line of separation, and go on to whatever that disposal or pickup area is. And then vehicle movements, for example, you have feed trucks, transport trailers, paths that visitors that are maybe the veterinarian that's servicing that site that they would follow, etc. And then ultimately the site entry. So this site right here, again, it's a 5,000 sow farm. The little barn clear to your right, I think is how you're seeing it. That white barn there is basically there's an office. There's a kind of exit area from the office, and then there's a loadout So if you look, I don't know, can I do a pointer with this? Do you know, Melee?
You should be able
Yeah,
to.
you should.
It's under
I
tools,
see
I believe.
remote control
You gotta annotate on the bottom left, I believe.
on what?
You should look for the annotate or should be under tools.
Um, oh, annotate.
Yep.
Oh, so now can you see my pointer then?
Yep.
Oh, excellent. So this building right here, there's an entry area here. This exit out into a main hallway that goes to these other barns, and then right here is the loadout. Okay. So if you see here as we enter off of this county road, down here at the bottom, it's County Road P. The site entry is right here. There's actually at that purple spot right above the star is actually an electronic gate, and you have to have a code to go in. So what you'll notice here, and this is actually, this won't change whether current and or enhanced, is right here, this yellow box. That's the designated parking area. Okay, that is where we park. Like right today, I parked right here. And then what I do is I enter at this purple spot. Again, that's a perimeter buffer area, which is this long path. And it's actually a fence. They actually fenced this site with chain link fence all the way around this thing. So we consider that the perimeter buffer area. That's kind of getting into the site area proper. Everything they have is self-contained. We spent a lot of time biosecurity on this. So employees, visitors, everybody parks right here, and then they cross into this building. And in this building is a place where we take our shoes off. There's a bench we sit on. We leave our shoes on that side. We flip over, and then on that side, there's what we call transport boots that we put on. And in here's a vehicle so that come rain or shine, nice snow, whatever we have going on, yeah, we get a lot of snow. Then they have a vehicle that will drive them down one of these paths. It'll come all the way over here and they'll enter and drive into this garage right here. And so by doing that, we avoid any contamination that might be here along the path. We consider what we call it the ground is red, and that there's always potentially something there, and we don't want to drag that into our farm. So now these employees come in, this not as big a building, but quite a large building. This building right here holds about 900 farrowing stalls. And it's really divided into two rooms. There's the north room, there's the south room. And then this is like a break area for the team that's down here. And then this roughly is 4,000 plus 4,000 or so gestating animals or down on this far end, you just can't tell. This area right here at the end is actually the gilt developer where they raise the replacements that they have there. So back to just what we do when we design your areas is we create this kind of outer border where somebody needs permission and they have to have a designated access point. So right here's where our feed trucks come in with that electronic gate. Here's where that same area is where that propane truck has to come in because this is just a large, this is the size of a tanker propane tank that is fixed and it's solid there. And so they can bring a whole tank or whole semi full of propane and fill that tank. Then, so that's a perimeter area. So only two places that you're allowed to cross across this buffer area is these two purple spots right here with a vehicle, right here on foot. So then the actual line of separation in this case is exactly the borders of the buildings. Okay, if I left a little gap there when I drew this, it gets hard. But basically, if you look at that on the outside, we call dirty. Anything on the outside of this red, even though it's within our buffer area, we call it red or dirty. Anything inside is green or clean. So the only places that we can enter in here is actually right where these yellow spots are. That there's actually some entries in there in each of those spots. This is where we go in when we shower. This is actually where we deliver semen to. There's actually a special room built. The semen's delivered up here by the company. The employees pick it up, they bring it, and they actually have a pass through there. This is for some loadout stuff there and this loadout as well. So this really, by looking at this, oh, and you can see up here at the top is our compost area, and that's outlined in black. So a state official can look at this along with everything that I kind of quickly scrolled through above with all the information, and they can have a really good idea of what this site is all about, what it's connected to as far as flow, what the site looks like, how it's built. You know, they're going to feel good about this one because I don't have to. It's got very strict access, but it's also has most of everything it needs is self-contained. It doesn't have to take their dead pigs. So if there's sick pigs here with ASF, they're feeling pretty good because at least for now we're composting here. If I have to euthanize 5,000 to 6,000 animals, we're digging a trench, and that's a whole nother thing that is being worked on, is what's the most efficient way to dispose of these carcasses. So I just thought it'd be good if you guys could see that. Obviously, your sites are not this big. Your perimeter buffer area may be, but at the same time, this is what we'll hopefully develop for virtually anybody on the island that we can. You can do them yourself following the secure pork supply. I encourage people to do it themselves and just ask questions because it gets them more engaged with what's going on, and it's a good educational tool. I offer that, hey, if they need me to do it, I'll have to call them with a couple questions on it, and then I send it to them when I'm done with it, and they review it and I modify if needed. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Tom. I am also going to put a link into the chat. If any producers on here that want to directly participate with the project, those are the areas where we can talk about becoming a certified collector and all those workshops that are going to happen in the spring. This is where you can sign up and we can collect some information from you so that we can get in touch with you when those things start happening. The presentation link that I shared earlier has the information from the last series that we did, from the first introduction and everything on there about being a participating producer in the project as well. We will continue to add to that PDF and slides for the remaining of our series and share that with everyone as well. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A or in the chat this time.
Yeah, and I would highly encourage what Melee just said there with the link. If this is something that you're like, yeah, we need to do this for my farm. The earlier we start this process, the better, because it'll just take care of a lot of early steps, middle steps, preparatory things, so that we can make the most of the site visit when we come in the spring.
I did not. Is anyone else in our project team have anything else that they want to add? Or any other questions from any of the else that's here?
I think just to adding, I think I mentioned it briefly, but yeah, even in the website, there's some plans there for people that are doing pasture raised pigs. You know, they can be adjust to you guys' needs. So if it's something that can be adaptable to that type of production as well.
All right.
Could you speak a little bit to how this system might be adapted to pasture raised pigs? I'm very concerned when I hear all of these restrictions that there's no way I can possibly cooperate with the system, given my system, which is working of pasture raising. And I'd like to, but I don't know how I can do that based on what I've heard.
I guess I don't understand. I guess I'd have to understand more of it, Gary, because you can easily create a buffer area. It may be a gigantic buffer area, but at some point your pigs are probably they have to at some point they have to have a confinement if it's the ocean or whatever that might be. So from that standpoint, to do a plan like this, it's to me, this is the one piece of all that we're going to present. The U.S. SHIP program actually becomes a little restrictive because it's going to have some verbiage to do with the way that we feed animals and what we feed them because of their fear of what the of feeding meat products back to the pigs. But honestly, on this one, this doesn't say anything more than, hey, where's your buffer area? What's your lines of separation? Um, in the event that there's restrictions put on someday with a foreign animal disease, where are they going to park their cars if they have to come? Where are they going to disinfect their tires? All that kind of thing. And so, unless there's something I'm just not thinking of, um, your biosecurity doesn't necessarily have to be um, what maybe the most strict biosecurities out there are. Um, your line of separation may be the wherever boundaries that you have. In fact, I thought I did one. Caitlin, did I do this one for Island Farms? I know I did something like it, but and Island isn't exactly uh
Yes,
pasture.
we went over it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not exactly pasture, but there's a lot of outdoor on dirt. But ultimately, it's just that you may just have a gigantic perimeter buffer area. So let's actually, I'm going to share for just a second again, because this is good because we're going to be dealing with a lot of the pasture setting. Um, so I'm going to go right back to this picture. Let's pretend these barns aren't even there, but let's just say that your pigs are allowed to roam the whole outset of this blue area along where in this case it's a fence, and that border could be anything that at some point they have to stop. And so that then what would happen, Gary, is this red line, this line of separation would just come out and it would overlap right on the blue line. Man, I know I did one of those for somebody, and that's exactly what it was. Is it was like that blue line and red line are all the same. And so you still at some point have an access point. And hey, your travel through that might be yellow and black arrows all over the place, right? So the black arrows here you see is this is where the dead come out and they go to here. But it just may look very, very different for you than what we traditionally see when we have confinement. You don't have confinement, or it's a different type of confinement, right? At some point they have to stop. That's your perimeter buffer area, and that's your line of separation. Or were you thinking of something else specifically with the SPS program?
Tom, I really appreciate it. I think everyone here is really trying to do the right thing, and I am too. And I'm just saying that I'm listening to what's being said. It scares me to death. It makes me feel like we're going to be raising pigs in a way that they're very susceptible to catastrophic failure. I think I mentioned that in the last call.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are other ways of doing this that are not working in a way that we're really trying to. I mean, if everything that you were describing was a protocol to try to keep a laboratory that was cultivating viruses safe, I think it's completely appropriate. But I'm a farmer, and I don't feel as though I can do any of what you're suggesting I do in a way that's going to optimize the entire operation. And I say this with all due respect, and to everyone on the call. I think we need to work towards food sovereignty. We need to think about inputs and outputs, including how we treat all water, all liquids that are going to be in effluent, and what their downstream impacts are going to be. And I'm concerned that if I open myself up to scrutiny, you guys are going to come and look at what I'm doing, which is working, and say you've got to shut down every aspect of what you're doing. But I'm willing to do that, and I hope you'll understand when you come and visit that everything I'm doing is working. And in some ways, I think it's contrary to a lot of what you're suggesting. And yet I think from a resilience standpoint, it's worth considering. And I hope we can work in the future with that spirit in mind.
Yeah, yeah. And so a little bit of what my goal here is, Gary, is that I have to work within the confines of what there is out there. So for example, let's say we tomorrow convince the entire US industry to do what you're doing. It would take us so long to turn that ship around that in the meantime we have all of a sudden ASF shows up. And so honestly, I mean, from your aspect, number one, you don't have to enroll in any of it. As far as I know, there's zero requirement. I think maybe the only thing you're really required to do is that if you're raising livestock, it might be something you have to be registered with the state. I'm not sure. Every state's a little bit different. So you don't have to participate in any of it. The problem for you will come in is if it happens, even if it's not in your area, and you fall into a buffer area, you're going to get knocks on your door.
I hear you, and and I've got those knocks. I know what that entails, which is why I'm on this call and why I want to participate, because I'm not trying to hurt anybody or cause a hazard, and I don't think
No,
anybody here is. But the question is how do we create a resilient food system now and into the future, and how do we create a situation where farmers are taking care of animals and land? And I want to work with you on that, and I just hope you're open to it. I think probably everybody on the call is. I mean, we're all here because we love the animals and we want to raise the best food possible. But if we're opening ourselves up to restrictions in a government that's obviously not trustworthy, that maybe needs to evolve a little bit, and maybe we can be leaders. Yeah, I know it's going to take time to turn the ship around, but if we don't start turning the wheel now, it's not going to happen any sooner. And
no, I was, yeah.
all I'm saying is, if you guys want to come over here and scrutinize what I'm doing, please, and tell me that I'm doing it wrong. But be open to the fact that maybe there's a different way to do things than the industrial model, which is not necessarily working that well for anybody.
Yeah. And honestly, what my goal would be is, and let's just talk specifically about the secure pork supply for a guy like yourself, is that it really wouldn't change it. It's really not designed to change how you raise pigs. I mean, it's basically just to have a preparation of knowing where your pigs are located and how you function, so that in the event that we get something, that you're not at risk of getting it, and if you have it, you're not at risk of giving it to someone else.
No,
So from that,
Tom, I appreciate all that, but what I'm suggesting is, are we putting into place a protocol which is creating pigs in confinement, which are naturally susceptible to some catastrophic failure and disease, because we can't inoculate against everything, we can't keep everything out. And I appreciate what you're saying, and I know we're trying to do the right thing, but if we're in a situation of hunger and you got to come and kill 5,000 pigs around here, I don't think it's going to make anybody happy.
right, the problem is those 5,000 pigs are going to die.
Not
Yeah,
necessarily. Not
yeah, yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
That's what I'd like to discuss with you. That's what I'd like you to see. I think there's a way of raising pigs that are more resilient with less of this type of addressing these situations proactively.
So, Gary, I think you have a lot of strong points, and I think that you have kind of like the long haul plan. With resiliency and with having better biodiversity and all of those things. Some of the things that really can help us from like on site, and I never think of like a farm as having a disease when I go to the different farms as a veterinarian. I always think of myself as the most likely disease carrier. And Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I'm always worried that I'm going to go to a farm or go somewhere and then bring it to the next farm. And that's like one of my biggest fears, because that would be the worst case scenario. So sometimes when you have systems like this where it's actually like pulled up and written down, it's a guide map for people coming onto your farm, just so that we, one, aren't backtracking through multiple sites and like recontaminating stuff, and two, so that we can come on and just make sure that us and ourselves are appropriately managed and sanitized, and that we're not introducing anything to you guys if we need to come on and assist, even on a day to day. regardless of anything else. And so it's more of not like worst case scenario in my mind, but it's how do we limit some of the things that we can limit that are within our control, that don't have effect on the pigs' lives, that don't have effect on how we're raising them and managing them. And they're just simply like where we're foot tracking, what kind of clothing we're wearing, are you changing your boots, are you cleaning your hands before you go deal with the baby pigs, right? And all of those things. And sometimes that can be enough, as I think Tom said earlier, like even just doing a tiny little bit of biosecurity is better than nothing. And 99% of the time, it doesn't change anything with how you actually function on the farm. It's more just laying a ground map for the rest of us that aren't on your farm all the time. And also so that we know that how you operate, so that we can keep things safe when we come.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Gary, is I'll make you a promise. If I end up visiting your site, I won't try to get you to change anything. I would love to learn what you're doing.
I'm
My
happy.
fear,
I'm happy to talk with you guys, and I appreciate
yeah,
the role that you
yeah,
guys play. All I'm
yeah.
saying is what you're suggesting scares me to death, and it makes me feel as though we're creating a system which is highly vulnerable, not only to diseases which might be controllable without catastrophic means, but to government regulation where they don't really care about our local resilience, and they're more interested in putting in overarching control methods as they're doing in many other circumstances around the country right now. And I think we have to take that into account. I apologize. I'm trying to be proactive here. I think we're a community of people who are producing food. We're going to be very important in time to come. And we've got to work towards resiliency and cooperation.
No, that's fair.
Just opening this chat. Yeah, thank you, Gary. We appreciate your comments and conversation with everyone here tonight.